me bring Dipuo Mokola into the conversation. Princess Dipuo Mokola into the conversation. Welcome to Power 98.7. Welcome to Power Perspective, ma'am. How are you?
I'm fine, and you?
I'm really, really good. So, so South African Royal Kingdoms Organization, SARKO, been around for a while, and I think since 2021 actually, and you've already been doing well. Just for clarity's sake, ma'am, are you going to be, contesting the elections in all provinces per this general election that we're seeing? Or will you be engaging in a few provinces, and or because you've already got quite a few, councillors already, and you've got four from a very short run into an election in 2021, and so quite an achievement in that particular case. But are you engaging nationally in this one, or how are you looking at this particular election?
Thank you very much for the question. We
Sure.
actually are registered, as you know, that this time we have three ballot sheets. They've
Yeah.
actually divided the National Assembly into two, 200s. One they call it the regional, one they call it national.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you are aware, having been interviewed different political parties, that IEC, when you are an unrepresented political organization, you had to submit
Okay. Dipuo
supporters.
Dipuo Mokola. Dipuo, can you hear me?
I can hear you clearly. Can you hear me clearly?
Oh, brilliant. Now I can hear you clearly.
Oh, okay.
Brilliant, brilliant. And I'm so glad. I didn't want the interview to be over really a bad line. I'm so glad I can hear you so clearly on the side of the line now. Ma'am, you were talking about the engagement with this election on the 29th of May. And you were talking about the three ballots, and you were talking of the national aspect and how you're engaging this particular election.
Yeah. So we managed to do the national in all nine
Sure.
provinces. And then we
Yeah.
did four regions, which is the Northwest, the Northern
Yeah.
Cape, the Free State, and Gauteng. And then we
Sure.
did one province. So from there, the system was giving us a problem. So we
Okay.
couldn't load more of our provinces. So we are actually in four regions nationally, all nine
Yeah.
provinces, and one province in the Northern Cape.
Sure.
Mm.
And what's your feel on the ground this time around? You just let me have an understanding. You registered the last time around on the 20th of October 2021
Yes,
with the IEC,
yes,
and you partook in that particular election of 2021, the local government election,
yes, we did.
and you did pretty well. That there wasn't a long campaign that you had. You were initiated in the same year that election actually was held. So you didn't have a real long run up to that election. So I suppose nothing can be gauged from that. But you still managed to get four seats countrywide. You got two in the Northern Cape, one in the Free State, one in the Eastern Cape, I think. What are
Yes.
you looking what are you getting the feel on the ground this time around? Because you would have been able to campaign now. You would have been able to make your voice a lot more heard this time around.
Thank you very much. We are very confident now. Remember, in
Mm.
2021, we only had 6 weeks to campaign.
That's it.
And we
That's what I
came,
meant.
yeah,
Mm.
and we came back with 4 seats. We really, really worked hard. Now,
Yeah.
we it was a welcoming thing. So now we've done our spade work. But with our organization, it's very difficult because remember, we're talking about land and dignity,
Yeah.
something that everybody's running away from.
Yeah.
When you're talking about land, it's a no-go issue.
Yeah.
So that is who we are. Because remember, we are not politicians, we actually royals. The
Yes.
ANC was actually
And
formed by royals to go and get the
mm,
land back, and they failed. So
mm.
we are doing it for ourselves now.
We're
Um,
doing it for ourselves now.
yes, remember,
Mm.
we are the landlords of South Africa, but I normally say we
Yeah.
are landless landlords.
Mm.
And it's a sad
Because those
situation.
land laws, if you talk about the land laws, and you talk about the land being an issue. 1913 would be probably your biggest hurdle in the legislative part of things.
Hence,
So if you look, yeah, if you, would I be right that if you went back to 1913, that's where the cutoff point would be in it?
that is where the whole sickness is. I will call it a sickness because ANC had one mandate to bring back the land from the kings, and they had 2/3 majority in 2024. The one legislature they should have changed is the Native Land Act of 1913, and they failed to do so. To this day, we are still landless landlords. It's even worse now because what is happening is that the land issue, if you look at a whole lot of political organizations, they're talking about the land issue as a cosmetic thing, as a manifesto item that we should put in for people to actually say they'll vote for us.
They engage it from a political perspective.
Exactly. For us, it's very personal because remember, kings, together with their soldiers and their communities, actually were the ones that were fighting for land physically from 1659. The first war was the Khoi War of 1959. The last war was the Mbambata Rebellion of 1906. The first political prisoners in Robben Island were kings, my great-grandfather being one of them. He launched the Langerberg War of 1897, and he was captured together with Kgosi Kgaleshewe and Kgosi Janki in the Northern Cape. So for us, it's very personal. To this day, we haven't received the remains of our grandfathers. We haven't received the remains of my grandfather. Mampuru Kingdom haven't received the remains of Mampuru. And all these wars were about land. So it's a very
Some of those heads still being in Europe, yeah.
Yeah, it is a very personal issue that to this day, the land is sitting on 87% of the land is sitting with the European diaspora or the Asian diaspora. Because remember, white people in our country are diaspora. They're not indigenous people of here. The same way that we are called diaspora.
1652.
When we are called diaspora when we leave the continent of Africa, it's even a slogan now, Africa and its diaspora. Why can't we say Europe and its diaspora? Asia and its diaspora? You see, if we start correctly defining concepts and defining things for what they are, that is when we will begin to actually correct the wrong that has been done.
Ma'am, how do you correct that where you begin to engage the monarchy, where you begin to engage the kings and queens of previous, who of course would have in essence fought those wars, and like you say, there in instances some of their heads are still in Europe, and as we ask for them to be returned, how do you engage within a democratic monarchy, status, a political system that works very, very differently? Or have you decided, because the voice of royalty is not being heard within the present day system of politics, it's best then that you engage this thing called politics so that things could be changed from then within?
Part of the reason why we registered with the IEC to participate in election is exactly that. We realized that democracy is not working for us and for our communities. Remember, the only job for a king is to take care of the community. And if you look at the status of our communities right now, it's devastating. Our community is very unstable, purely because the democratic system, it's 5 years and then you're out. And when people come in, they come in and they loot and they leave. Hence, we do not see development in South Africa. That's why we are saying we want a democratic monarchy. In a democratic monarchy, the monarchy doesn't cease to exist. It's there forever. And that is the monarchy that will bring in the stability. Because if you have to develop roads, for an example, and you're a monarch, you're working together with the prime minister and the ministers in parliament, you are going to develop because you're going to be there forever. And you actually live there. Remember, the king lives within their communities. So you also would like
And
to
there is
drive...
succession. Yes, and there is succession, which means,
Yes.
it carries on and on and on.
Yes.
The political system gives you 5 years.
Exactly. I mean, you can make an example with the UK. We were a British colony. The late Queen Elizabeth, she ruled for over 70 years and she had 14 prime ministers coming and going, and she was still there. And you look at the community, they're very stable. You look at Qatar, monarchy system. Korean, monarchy system. China, monarchy system. Japan, all the successful countries, they are a democratic monarchy. Yes. So you need that balance between the two. Because one is looking after the other. The monarchy is making sure that the politicians are not looting. The politicians are making sure that the monarchy is not abusing the system.
Within conversations of royalty, how much of a consensus, how much of an agreement, how much of a way forward, and which way forward is there consensus about? There's an engagement from the South African Royal Kingdoms organization to say, okay, we will take this on and we will engage the political space, but these are the things we are looking at: stability, and because that is what royalty brought. And then there's also the issue of the land, which we could go back to 1913 and before 1913, and why 1913 is such an important date. How much of a consensus within royalty is there that this is the way to go? Because once, and this is just on the top of my head, once there is consensus in an aspect of bringing everybody together in this particular way, then obviously that in its sense is a massive movement in its own. How much of a consensus do you have that this is the way to go?
Okay, I'll take it to 1913 Land Act, Native Land Act again. We agree 100%. All the monarchs who are members of SARKO agree, because the Native Land Act says if your land was taken before 1913, you're not eligible to claim for your land.
Yeah.
All the king's land were taken before. So literally, you can see that law was excluding the owners of the land. You look at CODESA. CODESA was talking about land, but the landlords were not there. To this day, we don't have the minutes of the CODESA. So you can see that the land issue and our current government and the people that negotiated and the people that participated in CODESA deliberately excluded the landlords. How do you go and talk about the land and you not include the owners of the land in that conversation? Furthermore, how then do you not make access of the minutes of the CODESA to them, because they are the landlords? So what we did, we actually are in the process of negotiating with the British embassy. We marched to them last year. We actually even marched to the Netherlands embassy. And we gave them our memorandum. What we need is the artifacts that they took from us. We need the remains and the heads. I don't understand. How do you have a museum of heads of dead people if that is not satanic? What are you doing? That is, that's brutal. That is absolute inhumane. We want those heads to come back. Also, we want the original maps of the demarcations of the land, because I'll tell you why, the importance of the demarcations. When they landed in South Africa, they found kings. They made their own notes and they were writing letters to their monarchs back home in Europe, right? Now, they know who they found here. They know. And that is what we want, because what they did, they actually created new demarcations. With these new demarcations, you find overlaps, meaning you find 3 kingdoms claiming one land, because they deliberately made sure that the fighting within the kings will continue. Because once 3 of us are claiming one land, we are going to fight for it. So they deliberately did that. But we know, history tells us, we know, our elders has informed us, there is no kingdom or a monarch that you're going to go to in South Africa that doesn't know its own demarcation. On top of that, that doesn't know the rightful heir. Because what they did when they came in, like in my case, when they took my grandfather to Robben Island as a captive, the community still needs a leader. Then they take one of their own to lead the community. So the majority of the kings and the monarchs that you see that are recognized by the government, actually they're not the rightful heirs. They are there to make sure that they are continuing with the mandate of making sure that the rightful owners of the land do not get the land. And those are the issues that we are grappling with, that we are sorting out. Those are the issues that made us to actually go and register with the IEC and contest within and challenge those issues within. If we need to make a difference, we need to make a difference at a point of legislature where the laws are being done. Or
hence engaging the political system.
Exactly.
Dipuo Mokola again. Ma'am, how do you address the Constitution as it is engaged now? Because in essence, there lies, if 1913 is the big hurdle, the element of engaging the Constitution and the Constitutional Court and those particular aspects and the Bill of Rights is the next hurdle to an issue of the land in essence. How do you engage that particular space?
Okay.
Without a 2/3 majority in it?
The one way is the 2/3 majority to get rid of the Constitution. That is our ultimate goal. Because the Constitution was designed by Europeans. There was a WhatsApp video that was running where a guy was saying, we have seen the white people burning the new flag, South African flag. But we've never seen them burn the Constitution, because the Constitution is protecting them. You'll never ever hear the European diasporas in South Africa, or Asian diasporas in South Africa for that matter, criticizing the Constitution, because it protects them. Look at the current political landscape now. The IEC was facing 19 court cases. 19. It has never happened. It tells you that there are serious problems within our Constitution. And remember, they created Chapter 9 institutions. Now, these Chapter 9 institutions operate purely from a legislature point. Everything that they do is guided by legislature. They don't have a say outside of legislature, which means they are the bulldogs that are guarding to make sure that the Constitution is put into place. So we really need to get rid of the constitution. And I can tell you now, we've been talking because we are clear that we're going to go for a coalition government. We are talking as a political organization. And most of them, the ones that I talk to, because obviously you'll talk to people that make sense to you, feel the same way about the constitution. I mean, look at what they did with unrepresented political organization. They had to submit 14,000 supporters before. So the only 52 made it on the ballot sheet. I'm one of them because I worked hard. But however, if you look at the number of political organizations that were outside the system, that the system locked on the 8th of March and they were unable to go in, and that it was a decision that was taken by only 16 political organizations, the one that sits at the parliament right now as we speak. So they wanted to make sure that there is no new blood that comes in. So they just make that decision and they hand it down to the IEC. The IEC must make sure it happens because they're a Chapter 9 institution. So can you see how twisted that is? How can a country have 16 people, 16 organizations that are captured to say they actually are the voice, they are going to make sure that our country is okay? You look at their sponsors as well. They're sponsored by one person. The IEC came up with political funding. We have to submit. Who is our sponsor? Fortunately, we don't have a sponsor and we don't see anybody sponsoring us unless people that can hear what we are saying. And you look at all of them. They are being given money and sponsored by one person. So they sit in one boardroom. So obviously, we are the people that are being fooled. The community of South Africa is being fooled here. We don't have an opposition in government as we speak. We have seen with this law of supporters, they agreed, all of them, the 16 of them, and they put it as a law to make sure that others don't come into the play, to make sure that they don't have opposition.
Princess Tepua Mokola, so much to say, so much to talk about.
So
I'm going to bring you back after the election, ma'am.
thank you. I will.
And
I will.
because it's a really interesting conversation because it has so many different facets to it as well.
Yes.
And the land is such an important issue to have, whether it's discussed in a political way or whether it's discussed in a historical way. It has so many facets to it. So, ma'am, thank you so much for coming on to Power Perspective. Thank you so much for coming on to Power 98.7. And I'm going to ask my producers to bring a conversation of this kind back so we can have a much deeper and longer conversation post the elections. I'd really appreciate it.
Thank you very much. You have a lovely evening further.